Welcome back to another episode of In the Doghouse, a podcast by Underdogs Athletics. Sadly, we do not have Justin with us today, but we do have Casey joining us, our rare appearance in the fall when I know you're coaching football. And so thanks for making the time, dude.
Of course. Glad to be here.
And as always, Dakota in a different room with different lighting, sometimes with different headphones, but always with us.
Hey, headphones have been consistent. It's the room that changes the most.
True. Always a slight yellow tint on the walls, though.
I think we're going to get some of those Golden Knights banners going on in the background.
Nice. Just get one of the big ones like Justin has for the Underdogs. It'll look like you're in a post-game interview.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the next time we do a podcast together, I'll be in a new house. I don't even know what my office is going to look like.
Well, whatever Kyra wants it to look like, it'll be very nice.
That's true. Yeah. Anyway, Casey, what's the latest for you? I mean, obviously, you coach football in the season, but you're still coaching full time as well, still competing, getting ready to compete. Where are you at with the season?
Yeah. So, yeah, like you mentioned, during the fall. So it's literally the Monday after the CrossFit Games conclude is always when the football season starts. So I go straight from like all summer long is like CrossFit training. That's what all the buzz is. And that's kind of where my attention is. And then the CrossFit Games. And then I shift into football season, which isn't like a full-time job, but it takes up a lot of my kind of extra time that I have in the day. So training definitely kind of takes a little bit of a back seat for this few months. I've still been training really actually after this game's probably a little bit harder and a little more consistently and more CrossFit competition preparation than I have in the past years. I'm not sure why. After I finished the games this year, I still kind of felt like excited to do Olympic lifting and burpees and Metcons and stuff like that. So I didn't have to take too big of like a deload necessarily. So that allowed for like Wodapalooza qualifiers that just concluded for me. Felt pretty good.
Wait. They make you do qualifiers still?
7th qualifier victory in a row, Kiefer.
And how many live competition victories in a row for Wodapalooza?
6 live competition victories in a row.
They actually
8 online competition victories in a row because there was the qualifiers for the year they ended up canceling because of COVID. So
are the adaptive divisions the only divisions that don't get an invite for the previous year's champion?
I don't know. Do the age groups? I don't know if the age groups do.
Dakota might know.
I'm pretty sure they do. I know they were.
Now I'm angry.
Yeah.
Nice. See, we said we weren't going to get angry at Wodapalooza on the show, and look at us.
I know. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I did have to do the qualifiers again.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least you were able to remind everybody who the champion is, let them know that you're coming back. So when you show up, you're already in their head.
Yeah.
Do you think that you occupy space between the years of every competitor in the adaptive division across the world?
I know in my division, yes. Because they tell me they literally tell me, they're like, whenever I talk to the guys at the games, they're like, whenever I'm at home training, I'm like thinking about where would Casey be at in this workout. So that's good. That's a good feeling for me. But what I don't tell them,
you're the standard.
What I don't, well, actually I have told them before too, is like, it actually is like the same in reverse, because like if there's a workout that I know this guy would be is really good at, whatever movement I'm doing, whenever I'm training in my gym by myself, I'm putting that guy next to me in that situation kind of in my head too. So even though I've been fairly successful, I still have to kind of put myself in that mode as well. So there's some guys that I tell them all the time that there's some guys that scare me still. They still scare me because they're crazy and they're fit and they're fearless. So like in any given moment, I keep it in my mind that if I let myself slip at all, there's people that want to step in there and take the spot. So
not to hype you up too much, I just want to ask, like, because you're saying thinking about these other guys, I'm just thinking about your training. Do you have weaknesses? Are you allowed to say that on here and give everyone else a little bit of insight?
I do have weaknesses. Deadlifting is a weakness for me, just in general and relative to my competition. If a heavy deadlift, volume deadlift, it's for whatever reason just not something that I love a ton. There's some guys in my division that can row really well. Like Concept 2 row is not my strongest machine. To be totally honest, I hate it. I don't enjoy training on a rower at all. I would pick running, echo biking, skiing over rowing any day of the week. So
just all hinging things.
Yes, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I honestly, I think it's my anthropometrics.
You're just a squatty dude.
I'm a squatty dude. Yeah, I'm just my back squat is more than my deadlift. And it's like my brother, and a lot of people, whenever I say that, they're like, well, that's probably just because of like you're having to use a strap and all that. That's not it. My brother, who has the same exact like dimensions as me, he's much bigger than I am.
He is much bigger than you are.
He is much bigger than me. His squat is more than his deadlift also. He's squatted 600 and his deadlift is like 515 or something stupid. Wow. So
you guys are just blessed with absurd quads. And that's what you got.
That's it. Yep.
I could testify to this. I remember talking to you before the games because I always ask about the guys in your division because I just want to know how much you're going to run away with things or what events are going to be most exciting to watch. And you always make it sound like things are going to be closer than they end up being, which is just, I think, maybe the mindset you go into things with. And I also think, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that's it. I guess to keep myself accountable to preparing the way that an athlete should prepare and kind of honoring that process. And not ever feeling like I can kind of half-ass it and still show up and run away with it. I tell myself that like I have to stay on top of everything in my preparation because there's guys I know they're training hard. They'll just send me videos. Like they'll just send me videos be like, hey, check out the clean I just hit. I'm coming up. I'm coming. Like they'll just literally straight up call me out. And so that's how I know that. Like they don't, like you said, I occupy that space, but
it's a motivator for them.
It's not, yeah. And maybe that's part of the mindset of a lot of adaptive athletes is like, they just don't give a F about anything. They're willing to go out and try to die for points and die for placements and whatever. Like they're not showing up with the mentality of I'm just here to try to take second. Like they're going to try to keep coming for me. So as long as I am signing up and showing up and trying to win, I always feel like I have to keep myself on top of my game and finding ways to improve all the time.
Very cool. And Wodapalooza will be your next competition?
Yes, I would have had the Wheel Wad Games in December, which is a big adaptive competition. Due to some family stuff, I'm not going to be able to be there, which kind of sucks because I missed last year.
I remember that.
I was secretly kind of injured a little bit last year.
Your knee, right? Knees.
Yes, I was, which is still my patellar tendonitis is still something that I have to take care of all the time. But it was like at this time last year, it was pretty bad. So I had to drop out last year. So I was looking forward to going back to Wheel Wad Games this year. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So definitely with that not being in the cards for me, Wodapalooza will be my next one.
And the hope was, I knew I'd figure out a way to get around to this, but the hope and the intention was going to be that you'd be coaching this year at Wodapalooza as well for a few athletes. I know you had some that were super close to qualifying. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as it turned out, they were both just barely on the outside. One literally in their spots. Another one was really on the cut line, but an unfortunate penalty on a workout that probably wasn't suitable for online competition anyway. Dropped them down. But I guess I wanted to talk more about like getting into the coaching side of things, talking a little bit about the scenario and how you go about supporting athletes, especially from a distance, who are feeling this defeat of like, I was one spot out, I was 2 seconds too slow, I was 2 pounds too light on something.
Yeah. Well, and also Chris Smolbach qualifies in the adaptive division, so he will be there competing as well. So I'll be competing, coaching with him again. And then just like you said, had some athletes who were really, really close. Kaylee Walsh in the women's 35-39 is in 11th as of right now, and she's very, very close. So potentially could get an invite if somebody decides to not accept their invite.
I wonder if anybody in that division also made the Elite Open division or the RX Open division and would go there. I don't think so this year from what I saw.
I don't think so either. And then Sammy Pugh was literally tied for 20th with she had a tie break, but she was on the bottom half of the tie break. So she was sitting in 21st, tied for 20th points wise, but sitting in 21st. So just outside of the elite cut line. And then I literally just saw a little bit ago, got a penalty for the deadlifts and handstand push-ups. So, I guess to answer your question, and honestly, for a lot of my athletes, or for those two in particular, they haven't really been doing a training build-up to Wodapalooza. Kaylee Walsh just competed at the Masters Fitness Championships in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So really all her preparation for the last several months has been for that. And Wodapalooza qualifiers just kind of happened to come the 2 weekends before that event. So for her, the mindset was probably not ideal, and the training type and kind of buildup was not perfect for Wodapalooza qualifiers. So she had a little more of a relaxed mentality around it. She kind of told me like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and sign up for Wodapalooza qualifiers, and I just kind of need to build them into my training as best as possible. So that's kind of the approach that we took with her, is trying to kind of get them done, not really planning on doing any repeats or anything like that. And just kind of making them part of her training, build up to the Master Fitness Collective. And so her performance on them really, like I told her, like, she's right there. She didn't really, I don't think she really thought she was going to be that close. Mm-hmm. And we didn't even really put a huge amount of focus into it. We chat real quick, come up with a game plan, put any notes of like, do this, don't do this. And then kind of just set her stuff up and go, and then have other training that she has to get done in addition to that.
It's almost like it's worse that way. It's worse to be that close like that than if she were just in 15th or 20th. It'd be like, oh, if she comes in 15, she's like, well, I didn't really plan for this. If she's that close, that always burns.
And honestly, so she tied at Master Fitness Collective. Mm-hmm. We tied for 4th, and was literally like a couple points out from 3rd, and she lost her tiebreaker. So her official placing is 5th, points wise tied for 4th, and only a couple points away from 3rd place. And the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th were very, very tight, where like a couple seconds in a workout would have jumped her. And so, she was very frustrated. She was frustrated, of course. And she's like, I feel like I'm cursed by this, like, close finishes with people. But she had a very, very good mentality about it, of like, it just, her, I think she said at one point, like, it just shows you have to, take advantage of points when they're there. And she was still very proud of herself and her performances on both of them, the qualifiers as well as the in-person competition. She's been very team focused for the last couple of years, and now kind of making a little bit more of a point to focus on the individual side, being in that age group division. So a great learning experience for her. And actually, honestly, even though she didn't qualify, I think it was a little bit of a confidence boost for her to know that like she's competitive with that group for sure. For Sammy, kind of same deal. Like, she had just competed at Metcon Rush just a few weeks before Wodapalooza qualifiers. And for her, like in the grand scheme of things, her year is really built around quarterfinals and semifinals, because that's really where her training focus is. So, she competed in Metcon Rush, with that being kind of one of her off-season competitions that she wanted to do, an opportunity for her to win some prize money, a chance to make some money off of putting a lot of time into competing, which I think is a great thing for athletes to do if they have the potential to. So she was coming off of like competition prep, a week of deload, basically 1 week of back to training, and then it was Wodapalooza qualifier time as well. So again, not really like the most ideal preparation for it. And like not really what her year is really built around in the grand scheme of things. She's been in very much of a base building time of her training during this fall time period, getting ready for the kind of ramp up that happens over the winter time leading up to the game season. So yeah, I mean, and again, for her, she's very, very competitive, and she is her own biggest critic, maybe a little bit to a fault. And she'll be one to definitely tell you the same thing, that like, she's very, very critical of herself and expects for herself to be at her highest level all the time. Which we know is just not really realistic for athletes. So yeah, I mean, as far as supporting them, it's just like giving them remotely the best possible strategies that you possibly can, getting them prepared as best as you can, having conversations about what their intention should be behind even doing competition to begin with, and making sure they kind of realistically see where they're at in their time of year, that, if you're not in a time of year and a training cycle that is ideal for 2-minute max sprint workouts, then those are maybe not going to be things that you're able to express your fitness at the highest level during that time range. So being able to kind of get them out of those misses or that slight bit of disappointment and back into training in a really positive way is another kind of challenge that is tough in the remote coaching setting, because you're not there with them in their training every day to kind of be giving them that pat on the back and that pep talk to get them kind of refocused. And, there's nothing we can do about the leaderboard now. What's the next thing we need to be prioritizing is kind of what the focus has to be.
Yeah. Dakota, did you have any of your remote athletes that were doing Wodapalooza stuff? Did Josh do them?
No, Josh is going to plan on doing the team stuff. I threw him a couple of those workouts just as, some daily Metcons or some variations of them. Yeah. Really, it was just Debbie. Yeah. And I mean, for the most part, a couple of heavy hitters in that division that were also at the games, but she also is at a time where, it's not a major focus, but she could basically qualify in that top 10 at any stage in her training. I think a lot of people probably felt, like you were saying, though, those quick Metcons, you might be feeling very strong this time of the year if you've been on a big strength block, but those Wodapalooza workouts, besides the one single modality strength, were very much, 3-4 months from now when it's open season, that's when everyone's going to be feeling good about those ones. So very interesting to see that at this time of the year. But yeah, Josh will do team. Josh will be my teammate, actually. Wow. So that'll be cool. That'll be the first time doing a team coaching athlete thing where it's me and them at the same time, or me and him at the same time. So that'll be cool. I'm not sure which hat I will primarily wear, but probably both at the same time, I imagine.
Yeah, I think something I've had to have conversations with people about is like these qualifiers, whatever people think of the qualifiers, right? The qualifiers were a wide open qualifier set for all divisions to be a part of in a really small sample size. And they were expected to separate out 20 elite from 20 RX from the rest of the people. And I think inherently what you end up with is people feeling like they end up people feeling like they end up on the leaderboard somewhere they didn't expect to be, or they get beat by people that they think that they're quote unquote better than. And it's a super interesting thing because now we're at a point where the open seemingly tests for one thing to kind of filter down. Quarterfinals tests for something a little bit different. And then you get to a semifinal stage, and obviously we're qualifying for the games. And so like I personally had athletes that qualified for a semifinal that were beaten by athletes that they beat by 100 spots in quarterfinals. And that's just, I get what Wodapalooza was doing. And I think they did a really cool job of creating tough workouts that everybody could do, that weren't that complicated and you can do from pretty much any gym setting. But the problem with that is like, okay, we didn't test any high skill gymnastics. We didn't really test you didn't really test heavier barbells in a workout setting. They were all very similar style of workouts. And so if you're an athlete that you're like, oh, I'm at a higher level, and that's more based on your skills and your strength than it is based on your work capacity, then you kind of get exposed in a setting like this. And that was the challenging conversation that I had to have with people about. It's like, this does not define your identity. This is just one competition and how they choose to qualify.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I brought it up several times, like every athlete's just at a different phase of training right now.
Yeah.
This off-season time period is like, once we get to open, quarterfinals, semifinals, everyone kind of falls along in kind of a similar build-up to the open. Whether you're an open level athlete, you're a quarterfinals level athlete, you're a semifinals level athlete, that time of year, the masses for the most part, as far as competitive CrossFitter goes, are kind of all in the same type of training mode. Whereas this time of year, you just don't know who's peaked, who's prime, who's looking at Wodapalooza as like their one thing that they're preparing for in the off season, and who's just doing it as part of their training. And then trying to help an athlete kind of understand, like for Sam specifically, she's been like running a ton, because for her at semifinals last year, running was a weakness. It came up multiple times. It was not something she's super confident in. And so, we've just been doing a ton of running interval work and building long distance stuff and zone 2 running. So it's hard for an athlete to understand that developing that ability can be beneficial for the 2-minute, 8-minute, 12-minute workouts later on down the road.
Just not today.
Yeah. Right? You have to have this transition in the intensity and the, you have to, there's just a law of specificity to your training where if you're in a foundation building time period, you're building important things for those higher intensity pieces down the road, but there has to be, it's not going to be instant. There has to be still, specific preparation for what that event is going to be. And this foundation is going to help to optimize that. But doing, 5K interval work right now is not going to transition instantly to a 12-minute AMRAP of lunges and double unders and dumbbell push press.
Right.
In 6 months, we hope that the capacity that she's built now will transition to that once the training has built up to that. So it's hard to kind of understand where, for athletes can maybe feel like they're spinning their wheels a little bit, or what they've been doing over the last 2 months hasn't been paying off, because then they do this qualifier. And just like you said, they feel like there's athletes that they should be better than that are beating them in workouts. And it's kind of the argument that I make all the time of like, you're at certain times of the year, you're developing your fitness, and then you're optimizing your expression of that fitness once you get into competition season. So it's just about that kind of play of like where your training is at.
So here's my question for both of you guys off of this is, do you think that all athletes should be looking at their year in terms of like long-term development, kind of putting all your eggs in one basket to be ready at a certain thing, whether that's your quarterfinal, your semifinal, whatever? Or do you think that that's something that's better reserved for those that feel like they're on the brink of their next stage, whether that's like they're on the brink of a breakthrough to the games or a brink of a breakthrough to the semifinals, and that for the rest of the people that, kind of for their actual love and enjoyment of this, that's staying a little more balanced throughout the year so you can have these like micro peaks and you can do more competitions feeling closer to your best is more optimal?
I'll go first. I was thinking, it kind of depends what your long-term, idea of yourself or yourself as an athlete is going to be. If you think you're going to be at that games level and you kind of have that chance, and maybe you are on the semis brink even, and there's something like running or a heavy lift that's going to be holding you back, then you might have to, I wouldn't even say bite the bullet, but understand and stay a little more reserved in a training phase to actually work on those weaknesses. I definitely know there's a good population out there that's super happy doing intermediate competitions. They want to progress a little bit here and there. They want to see their lifts go up a few pounds and their mile time drop a little bit, but it's the off-season competitions that are going to keep them pushing and make them a little more bought in throughout the rest of the year. Doing repeat intervals for 4, 5, 6 weeks later to have a small increase is going to make them a little bit more down on their training on a day-to-day basis. And a little bit more of the, I guess you could call it the class style, where the WOD every single day seems kind of fun and fancy, will be something that I know I have a couple people that gets them more bought in on a day-to-day basis. And they're almost more happy saying that was a great workout instead of saying I was 2 seconds faster, or I lifted that weight a little bit easier. And so, yeah, really it's, the coach athlete relationship of what do you want? What do you want?
Yes, I agree 100%. My answer, Kiefer, was yes, because you kind of mentioned there are these, and there's probably more people that kind of fit somewhere in between and on either end of the spectrum or whatever. The conversation that I have with some people who can start getting very, very, neurotic about progression and preparation for a certain event or whatever it might be, is like, hey, let's take a step back. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is this your profession, right? There's only going to be a small, very, very small amount of people that are going to be able to train as a CrossFit athlete as their job, right? Mm-hmm. So that is kind of its own realm of person. And yes, their entire day and their entire life should be built around being the best athlete they can possibly be. And then you kind of will have these cutoff points from there. And so, for the person who, like, I coach athletes that they don't even care where they place in the open. Like, if they make quarterfinals, they'll do them and be happy about it. But I've got people that, their entire year is based around these specific 3 local competitions that they do, one in the spring, one in the summer, and one in the fall. And 1 or 2 of those are team events that it's at a gym that they have a bunch of friends that go to, and it's kind of a big occasion for them. And so what their focus looks like is so much different than someone who is trying to make that jump at semifinals from 23rd to 12th to try to qualify for the games. And so for that
was a very specific placing. Who are you talking about?
I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So so that, like, someone like that, even if they want to do something like a Wodapalooza qualifier or a Rogue qualifier or 1 or 2 other events to try to win some prize money, the grand scheme of things of their year is built around peaking at semifinals, because we've had a conversation that's what their number 1 priority is as far as their training as an athlete goes. So what that looks like for that individual is much different than someone who wants to be ready to be competitive with their teammates at a local competition in April and in October. And so the conversations that you have with those people are different, and the way that you approach something like Wodapalooza is different. Like Kiefer, I'm sure you have the top athletes in the sport. If they're doing Wodapalooza, they're thinking about it as, this is a practice for me for the games. This is a chance for me to kind of just test out some of the things that I've been trying to close the gap on, to jump from 24th place at the games to a top 10 position at the games, because a few small differences and changes in my ability can make, a huge difference there. So, it's just like what Dakota said. It's that coach athlete relationship, and understanding what someone's priorities are and helping them kind of develop really, really solid intention around what they're training for.
Yeah. I agree. I guess I knew what everybody's answer was kind of going to be. It was more of a discussion topic. Yeah, whatever. Well, you
answered the question in the question, so
I'm so good at that. But I think that's in general one of the biggest defining features between having a coach and having an individualized plan for you versus following a training program.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still over and over again get this question about like, should I do template or should I do do individualized coaching, or what's different about your program from XYZ? And that's really it. It's like, I feel incredibly confident in our templated training programs for the elite program, the RX program. Biggest difference being, right, elite peaks for semifinals and the RX program peaks for open and quarterfinals, right? And I'm very confident in their abilities to do that. But at the same time, those programs aren't written specifically for any individual with any specific long-term weakness to work on. They're built to help that people get progressively fitter over the course of the year in all areas in a balanced fashion. So if you took, the qualities of all good CrossFitters and you boiled them down to the most general vanilla version of a very good CrossFitter, that's kind of how it's built around. It's like, we got to get a little bit better at all the skills. We got to get a little bit better on all machines and running. We got to get a little stronger and a little better at this. And what happens when you have a general program, as good as it is it's not perfect for any one person. Now, when we compare template to template, I would stack ours up against anybody. But if you compare template to individualized, there's always a benefit to individual, and that we get to strip away the things you don't need, focus on the things you do, and create a timeline that's perfect for you as an individual. With our template, what we try to do to kind of like get as close as we can while still having a long-term focus is we have like a couple important checkpoints over the course of the year. So right now, for example, we're in the middle of the off season. The RX track is further into the off season than the elite track, because the RX track began that after quarterfinals and the elite began that after semifinals. But basically, like, we use Wodapalooza qualifiers and then Wodapalooza as two of our little bit of like a checkpoint periods, especially the qualifiers being that it's one of the most broadly used. And it's something that a lot of our athletes tend to do. And so it's a nice way to say, like, okay, we're going to kind of build towards this, use this as a little point in the off season that we encourage people to do to see where their fitness is at relative to their fields. And then we continue on the off season. Now we're kind of wrapping up week one of that off season. Now we're like, this is a really big strength phase for our program, because in general, right now is the time of the year that I would love for people to be really ramping up their weightlifting and their strength stuff, knowing that as we get closer to the open and quarterfinals, we might do more lifting under fatigue, more complex work, more focus on CrossFit stuff as well. Whereas right now, I consider this to be like one of our second kind of aerobic phases and weightlifting phases simultaneously, with very little heavy emphasis on CrossFit in between. It's like, we got to get stronger. We got to get better at like strict skills and drills. And you got to get better on machines so that when it's time to do a whole bunch of open style stuff, that we're ready for it. But I think that was my plug for our template programs. Started this week. Cycles are always ongoing. We have a 7-day free trial. You could jump in anytime. I would like to think that it's one of the easiest to follow programs out there. It's laid out very clearly in terms of what you're doing with each piece. And I think that makes it easy, whether you can do it all or you can't do every piece, to identify like, oh, I'm X type of athlete, I should work on these 3 or 4 pieces for today.
Yeah. And Kiefer, one thing I was going to mention is, again, not trying to be an advertiser for the template programs, but, for anyone who doesn't understand what he's talking about, as far as how our templates are broken down, it's very clear breakdown of who you are as an athlete. Between the elite, the RX, the everyday, the masters, the adaptive. And then within those, there's, just like what he said, these checkpoints throughout the season, Wodapalooza, whatever other qualifiers that might be throughout the year, other big competitions.
Yeah, Masters program will do Legends or Masters Fitness Collective.
Right, exactly. On the adaptive, we'll do Real Wad. Yeah. That's what a lot of the template programs actually don't do. They just base their entire year around the game season, because they've kind of said, well, it's hard to keep track of what these other things are and who's going to do them and who's not. But I like that we've kind of taken the approach of like, well, these checkpoints throughout the year are beneficial, whether you're actually planning on doing those qualifiers or preparing for those, or, even going to register at all. We just can say, for an RX level athlete, Wodapalooza is a great checkpoint, because you're on the same leaderboard as the elite, the RX, and every kind of person down from that. So, even if you're not going to register for it, it's a good one to, in this kind of almost halfway point through the year relative to when the game season is, to check in on like, okay, where are we sitting at? What's our fitness level? Knowing that, maybe we haven't done a complete buildup for that or whatever that might be. So maybe I'm kind of just
it's good. I literally, so like, generally speaking, if we wanted to look and see a comparison of a couple athletes who have never trained together and see who's fitter, we look at like past open and quarterfinals performances, right? I had two guys who don't know each other at all from the template, both looking for a team for Wodapalooza. And I was able to go in and look at their individual Wodapalooza scores to make a comparison that's most relevant right now. And like, that's the exact thing, is like, okay, let's see how you stack up against your peers. Let's get a good reminder of like, oh, like we're still not that good at very general work capacity type workouts in a 10 to 20 minute time domain, like time to get back to work on this. Or maybe you did much better, and maybe you went from finishing around, 100th in the qualifier last year without the open divisions being involved to finishing 70th this year with all of the divisions involved. And you're like, okay, we're not where we need to be, but we got better. And none of the things that you excel at relative to field even came up. So like, these are small wins you can get. Yeah, that's also a specific person. Yeah.
I love that point also, which, not being critical of Wodapalooza, one good thing that the qualifiers did was, you kind of said, were just simple. And so the people that, after like watching the CrossFit Games in August, they're like, I need to be working on my L-sit rope climbs and my bar pullovers and my wall facing handstand push-ups and my freestanding handstand push-ups and my pirouettes. And then
none of it.
What are they still not competitive in? It's double
CrossFit.
unders, light dumbbell walking lunges, dumbbell shoulder to overhead, 225/155 deadlifts and kipping handstand push-ups. It's back to another good reminder that just some general physical capacity improvement is really what the vast majority of people
and this has been our soapbox for the last 2 years that we've been doing our program, is like, if you're constantly doing workouts that look really sexy but have high skill movements that you can't do at intensity in them, then you're not getting better at your skill and you're not getting fitter, because you're just being limited in your intensity by the fact you have to break something up too much in the workout. And you're probably not getting better at the skill because you have no way to actually identify if you're getting better or build volume or build technique. And so we've done this forever, really, is like, we take all high skill movements out, we make them their own training pieces, often on their own, sometimes in little couplets or interval work. It's a skill piece, really, that you could think of as just strength work, but for your gymnastics movements. And then we condition really hard, and we do workouts that for the most part don't have a skill or a load in them that would stop anybody in their tracks. And if there is something that's a little too high skill for you, then it's pretty clear and evident in the workout, because if you're not training intensity, you're not getting ready for the sport. And that's the reality of it. It's like, with all the high skills and all the sexy stuff and all the heavy lifts, the majority of workouts just boil down to who has a better work capacity.
That's the gatekeeper.
Yeah. Just
to circle back for a second, you had said something that like not all the programs are doing some of these like off-season checkpoints or going through some of these online qualifiers. I honestly just learned that 2-3 weeks ago. I have a client that has been following a competitor's track for 2 years now in her garage. We started doing some personal stuff. We were doing one workout, and I just kind of referred to one of these open style workouts. She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I mean? It's this famous workout." And she's like, "No, we never do that."
Yeah.
Like, what? How have you not done that? She goes, "Yeah, no, we just do all these crazy high skill, boom, 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 boom workouts." And I was kind of surprised. I guess I didn't know that was even us being better than everyone else in that regard.
Every program has an identity for things, right? And there are certain programs that are based on what an athlete did at their peak to get to their peak, or the types of things they do, and that works great for them. There are certain programs that are really like written as a copy or based off of the training that their current elite athlete is doing. We have to recognize is like, that probably means it's not suitable for anybody that's not at that level yet and needs to get there. Because whether it's because of their sports background or because they spent 5 to 10 years getting ready to be at this point, they're just in a different position than you're at. And so, I would say that the framework of our program is very similar to a framework that even somebody like Ricky, somebody like Alex Guzan, somebody like Kyra is following. It's not what they're doing now. It's more about what they are doing or what we would have them do to develop the skills that they have right now. What else? Casey, you got any shit to talk? You got a soapbox? Here's your 5 minutes of glory. You want to talk about the adaptive workouts at Wadapalooza, or would you like for them to let you in the gates this year?
Oh, don't. We already. Oh.
Yeah. Well, just my one. Well, no, I don't.
Listen, about 3 months ago, you were on this podcast, and I said if any of these people came to you and asked you to be on the other side and be in charge of programming to help improve the stuff in the sport, and you said no.
That's correct.
So now this is what you deserve.
Yeah.
Burpees.
Burp 30 seconds.
Tabata burpees. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, I was feeling equally as stressed once the games was over. My fantasy football season kicked off, and geez, it's been crazy.
I had to stop doing fantasy because I just started not liking watching football because I'm getting angry about a guy that plays for a team that I literally don't care about at all not having any receptions, and I'm yelling at the TV. I had to step away from it.
I hate having to root for the Cowboys, but their defense is so good right now.
I have finally reached a point where the off season of CrossFit is actually the busiest season of the year. The best thing about the season is that it's predictable and everybody's doing the same thing. Yes. The worst part about the off season is that people are all over the fucking map. Yes. I thought the off season was going to be like time to breathe. I've been in Utah. I'll be in South Carolina. I'm going to Austin. I'll be in Egypt, and then I go to Dubai all before Christmas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
A lot of souvenirs.
A lot of souvenirs.
You're the best man for the job, Kiefer.
Well, thank you. That's only because Justin gets sick every time he travels. Otherwise, he would be the best man for the job.
Well, he's got a few years on you. He's just not built for it anymore.
Yeah. We'll see. I've been training for this. I did some arms today. Actually, I went for a 2-hour bike ride with Alex and Kyra today, prepping for Rogue in case they got to get outside. Crushed it. Came home, went to the apartment complex gym, immediately to the Nautilus machines and started ripping some arm work.
Love it.
I'm a hybrid athlete.
Did you get lost on a bike ride? Is that what the issue was?
No. We didn't get lost on a bike ride. Oh. So here's what happened. We tried to find a new trail. Well, we all have like hybrid fitness style bikes. The original trail we were going to do was actually just a little bit too rough of terrain for our bikes, or we would have been on and off it or going too slow too often to get like our desired training effect. So we found a different one in a new area, and it was supposed to start at like a coffee shop. It's a 13-mile loop. And we encountered challenges with finding the actual route because it's not like we were in a national park on a trail the whole time. We were kind of going through town to get to something. So it took us 45 minutes to find the right route, which is fine. We were still biking. We were still moving. We finally get on it. We get probably halfway out. We're at the furthest point if we were to keep going straight. And Alex is like, my bike doesn't feel right. Looks down, flat tire. So the hero that I am identified the fastest route back, going backwards, ripped it back to the car
with a flat.
My bike was not flat. While the girls were walking with their bikes, got back to my car, hop in the truck, come back, save the day, pick them up. It's the end of the ride. But we made it like we were at the 2-hour mark at that point, so we were good.
Hey, I watched a video of some people doing some hill stuff.
Yes.
Wearing some rucksacks.
Yep.
And there were some people there that appeared to be running, and there were some people there that appeared to be walking. And I'm not going to specifically say who it was that was walking. Were they doing different workout? Were they doing a different workout, or?
Are you talking about me, or do you want to talk about the actual people doing it?
I'm talking about you.
First of all, here, listen. Zone 2 has no pace. Zone 2 is all about desired heart rate effect.
That's right.
I was probably in zone 1 the entire time. I was coaching, not training. I was also educating our new friend, Peter, who's probably not going to ever watch this, but he is a highly dogmatic powerlifter, weightlifter, strongman style coach who's trying to understand CrossFit. And we like to educate him on a regular basis. And I am dealing with a flared up meniscus tear, so there would not be any running for me. Otherwise, I probably would have joined for that part after excluding myself from the first part.
Fair enough. Yep. You're excused.
Thank you. I did go on a 45-minute ruck walk with Kyra the other evening.
Wow.
Yep. Full Rogue training in effect.
Yeah, how's she feeling about Rogue?
We're excited. I think it is undeniably the fittest she's ever been. It's the most excited she's been to compete. I think going team this year was a great opportunity to like take an extended period of time to get better at her weaknesses, which is also my plug for team. Like it takes a lot of stress off of you to be an individual. But she's super fit, also hitting some near PR numbers in her strength lifts, which is exciting because it hasn't really been a priority. Had a good training weekend with Chandler and Alex that I think was like the first time we've had a chance to see her head-to-head compare with people that are at that similar level right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's going to be cool. I think she went into it with expectations of like just being excited to qualify. And now we're going with expectations of being like, no, I don't want to just be there. Like I want to compete on every event.
Yeah.
And so she's got that. Then she's got Dubai. And then we're going to kind of take our like downtime after that, different sort of year for her. We're like, okay, she has these opportunities. She did the games on a team. She has Rogue. She has Dubai. So rather than taking this as off season, she's going to take this as like big competitive season, really get a good feel for where she's at with an individual field and then ramp back up.
And what other underdogs are at? I know you guys we don't have to talk about Rogue too much. You guys are probably going to talk to Justin next week about it. I hope. What other underdogs are there? Alex, Kyra,
Ricky and Bailey.
Yeah.
Bailey's like Ricky 2.0 too.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so excited for the whole crew we have. This is, I mean, we've always had sort of a smaller camp, but we've always had like at any given time, a few really incredible athletes, but to have 4 people going to Rogue feels like a very special moment for our team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different sorts of preparation for everybody. Kyra, this was like before the games, even on the team, she was saying like, I don't want to deload after the games. I want to get right back into training and I want to give Rogue qualifiers my best effort. And so that was like, if she made Rogue, we were going to just keep it running. If she missed it, then we would deload after that.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky obviously was hurt this year. And so he didn't get to compete in the season. He has literally been like this starving caged animal getting ready for this event.
I can only imagine.
And then on the flip side, you have Alex and Bailey who are coming off of like incredibly exciting CrossFit games for them. Bailey is, he feels like he's been trying to get to the games forever, finally makes it, shows up, doesn't just show up, but like finishes 12th, exceeds everybody's expectations. And I think for him, like that's such a massive emotional dump that you come back and like you need time off. Yeah. Similar for Alex. This is her second time, but the first time she was there to show herself that she could hang and belong. And this year she shows up like, no, I'm a top 10 athlete and I'm trying to make the podium. And she damn near did make the podium. And so I think for both of them, that time off period right after the games was much more important, which just means that I think that maybe their mindset going into Rogue is a little different, where like they're going to try to get as fit as they can and they're going to show up and they're going to compete, but they haven't had 2 to 4 months of building up to it. They're going to have like 6 weeks, shake the dust off. Like, let's see how fit we are right now.
Yeah.
Which I think both are great. And I think that's the beauty of something like Rogue is like, it's a showcase event. You get invites to be there. It's an honor to be there, especially for those that get the invite from the games. They do a really good job of taking care of the athletes. So you don't have to wonder like, all right, if I'm not in shape, should I really pay the money to go on this trip? Like Rogue takes care of all of that for them.
Yeah.
And they pay everybody. So it's going to be a cool event. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. That's probably my favorite off-season one, just from a spectator standpoint. And then of course, anytime that there's people there to cheer for, it makes it even that much better.
I mean, having just 20 people on each side means that at most you're having 2 heats, and it's for the most part the most recognizable athletes in the sport. So like there's not a moment like you might have in other cases where there's just 10 people on the floor that you don't know that well and you lose interest. It's like every time there's an event, you're like, I got to be watching this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of fun. What do you think? All right, so this will be our last topic. Sorka's gonna be pissed. We're still stuck on here. This parlays off of that because we're talking about like viewability and excitement for these things. If the games in its new venue does reduce to just being individuals and teams, and adaptive and age groups each get their own separate individual event, do you think taking yourself as a competitor out of it, thinking from a spectator standpoint, from a business standpoint, do you think that is a positive where, all right, we're showing up and the action is highlighting specifically what people are here most to see?
There's a yes and a no answer to that. So, of course, you do a good job of answering the question really well.
I don't mean to.
Yes, the benefit to that is, okay, well, we all saw what the live stream for age group and adaptive was at the CrossFit Games this year. It was
bullshit.
unviewable. So maybe that if adaptive and age group are separate events. First off, my assumption would be that they would still be sanctioned through CrossFit. CrossFit would still host the
help program,
process, be in charge of some of the programming, if not all of it, or whatever. A very similar relationship to how everything has always been. It's just that they're kind of offloading some of the organization and the hosting of the event to a second party. There would be, of course, the benefit to that, just what you said, that's the only thing that's going on. It's not a sideshow. It's not something that is taking resources away from something else that is what the actual focus is. So there's some potential benefits to that. Also, some potential downside to that is that the overall spectacle may not be as big. There's not going to be the same size of vendors and sponsors and extra events, and the spectator experience may not be as big of a spectacle as it is at the actual CrossFit Games. So there's some potential downside. I don't know. My mentality is usually build it and I will come. I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to get the spectacle CrossFit Games experience. So at this point, I'm just kind of advocating for the best thing that we can possibly get, whatever that looks like. And so I feel like I can see big positives with either one, whatever that happens to look like. To answer one of your questions earlier before we actually went live, yes, my family we have already reserved our stay in Fort Worth in case it does happen to be there. And we made sure we can cancel if we need to.
Yeah, I think of events like Legends that are specifically for masters, and they're awesome. All the people involved are awesome. They might not have as many people, but everybody is there and bought in. So whether it's age group or adaptive, you can link those two together. I think the people that would buy tickets for something like that are going to make it a good experience. And then I think of things like the games where it's 2 or 3 days beforehand. The tickets are technically free to get into the Coliseum on those days. And even though it's not as full, they're still getting some of that carryover. When I sit in the stands, people are like, "Oh, who are you cheering for?" And I tell them about Debbie or I tell them about Casey, and they're always so impressed. And they didn't come to the event to watch Debbie. They didn't come to the event to watch you. No offense, champion, whatever. But they came to watch.
We're trying though.
They came to watch Roman, or they came to watch someone, one of these other, hot shot chicks, and they end up having a what?
Just like you said, Roman or another hot shot chick.
I know. I tried to be inclusive and do guys and girls. It was a bad delivery. But then they end up having a great, few moments where they get to see a different part of the sport that they didn't even really know existed. And I really think there's going to be a lot of miss out on that one if they separate it.
Yeah.
Even though it'll be handled excellently, whatever they decide to do with it, they're going to miss out on a lot of carryover.
I don't know that I have an answer for it still either. There's one part of me, and I'm obviously, as you guys are, I have this strong vested interest in it because I have a teen athlete that I've been working with for a couple of years who really our sole focus for the next year is to make the games as a 17-year-old and a 16 to 17. And having known that since we started working together, that was the goal. To me, to feel like she doesn't get the opportunity to do that at the big Mecca stage where she's competing, she's warming up in the same room as the elite athletes, and it's the same week in the same venue, is sad and feels like a big letdown. But at the same time, having been at the events and knowing that when you go to an event where majority of the people are there to see the elite crowd, you end up with a stadium that's empty or a field that's empty when anybody besides the elite crowd is going, makes me feel like the opportunity for them to be a separate event means that when you're there for Wheel Water, you're there for the pit teen throwdown, or you're there for Legends, you're there just to see that crowd, and you're just as invested as you would be if you're watching the elite crowd. Makes me excited that you can build truer fans to it. And so my hope is that if that is the case, when CrossFit partners and they give their resources towards that you're able to make it like the most impressive thing we possibly could for each of those divisions. And I think that that's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
And they could have a live stream. On that note, other quick recent news or upcoming news. We do have 4 Underdogs athletes competing next week at Crash Crucible. I don't know how much you guys have looked at it, but
it's stacked.
JR from Crash has done such an incredible job making this an event that's unlike any other local comps. I have to give props to him in that. He's invested a lot of his own money in equipment and resources that make it so that you feel like you're stepping onto a major competition stage when you do it. Like, they have pegboards, they have flip sleds, they have new implements, they have handstand ramps for everybody. Like, no local competition has access to this many things. It's going to be live streamed. They have leaders jerseys for things. He's got a prize purse. He has a really good field, so it's going to be exciting. We have 4 Underdogs total competing, 3 male individual athletes, and then Holly Henderson's competing in the elite masters division, which I think, like to think she's going to go in as a favorite and crush it. But super cool event. I'll be down there. None of you clowns will be there apparently, but we would love to have you if you want to show up. And then
they're doing the events are really cool because they're all like remixed variations of old games or regionals or whatever workouts, which is pretty cool.
They're awesome. And that was one of the cool things for that Masters division is like a lot of these events are ones that the people in the Masters division have done before. Like Elijah Muhammad's competing. He's probably done every one of these workouts at some point in his competitive career. And
it's in some variation. Yeah.
It's a cool event. I'm excited to be there, excited for our athletes. And I think that's all I got. Yeah, I think next time we're on the show, we'll be talking a lot about Rogue. Hopefully we have some more hints as to what's happening at Rogue. Maybe we'll be able to do a little recap of Crash. I probably won't be on with you guys next week since I'll be there. But Casey, Dakota, appreciate you being on. Justin, wherever you are, we're thinking of you. We miss you. We love you. Get well soon. Big thanks to Beck Bodie. Without them, we would not be able to have Soroka in the background producing the show. Beck Bodie is a financial group that many of us and many of our athletes have been using to help kind of figure out their financial fitness, for lack of a better way to say it. They kind of do a soup to nuts job of helping you with investments, helping you with planning. And so, one of the owners is a good friend of all of ours. He's an avid CrossFitter. And when he got involved, we were super stoked. So thank you to them. Thank you to you guys. Thank you to our 2 live listeners. One of them is me, and we will see you next week.